Okay, well, like I said, tonight is about inspections. So this section of the contract gets a little crazy. There's a lot of legal terminology in here and everything else. So I kind of wrote down some notes as I go kind of line by line through this, because just so you guys fully know this and feel more comfortable with it. And that way you guys can help your clients better with understanding what's going on. So it starts right here on line 261, inspections, and it's its own part of the contract. And again, you can have inspections. Some people are truly just waiving their inspections in this crazy market, and they would check this box here. But most of the time, and especially in a balanced market, you are going to have some sort of inspection, because even though whatever a seller puts on a seller's disclosure, or maybe they have an exemption and they're not having to disclose anything, just having that peace of mind, it's almost like insurance. Like, hey, I'm paying a couple $100 on a $400,000-$500,000 home. It's almost like insurance. And I always obviously always recommend getting an inspection. That way you're having a trained professional look at it. They're paid to find items that are wrong with the home. So like us, we kind of start picking up on things here and there, but they will find whatever they can. Also, like, usually they are licensed, they're insured. So if they mess up, it's better on them versus us. And so diving in with the bold, it is saying that inspections are the buyer's expense. So we had a situation recently, which was actually interesting. The first time I've seen it, buyers were under contract. It went through inspections, passed everything. Now we're waiting to close. Something happened where they had to cancel the contract, and the buyer was making a request to the seller, hey, you should reimburse me for the inspections. Now, they can make that request, first time I've ever heard it, but the seller is under no obligation to agree to that. So just right here, 264, it's made at buyer's expense. So it was unfortunate the contract couldn't close, but that buyers, they're out of luck. Like, they're stuck with that, paying that bill for the inspections. Let's see. And then it is saying 265, the parties agree that in the event the buyer shall elect to contract with a third-party inspector to obtain a home inspection, the inspection shall be conducted by a licensed home inspector. So that's a lot different than like, hey, my buddy's going to do it or something like that. Like, it's a licensed person. Now, this doesn't prevent a buyer from conducting their own inspection, and that's what this next line is saying, is nothing shall preclude buyer from conducting any inspections on his or her own behalf. And then they can, even though this says a licensed home inspector, if they want to get particular systems checked out, like heating and cooling, roofing, electrical systems, something that's more specific than what a general inspector looks for, they can still do that as well. And it's saying retaining a qualified, if not required by law, licensed professional to conduct inspections of those more specific systems. So that's a key distinction too, is the general home inspectors, they're just that. They're kind of a general, broad sense of what they should be looking for in a home. They're not necessarily the experts with roofers, where roofers all day long, that's all they do is roofing. I've faced many situations where an inspector might say, hey, this roof looks bad. You have the roofer come out and he says, no, actually there's about 7-8 years left on this roof. So there is a key distinction if you need to bring out those people during your inspection period. And the more the better. If big things that we've seen that have been missed are septic inspections. So if you want to get those septic systems inspected, and then also wells, having those inspected too. We ran into a situation where one of our agents helped somebody buy a home. They had a general home inspector. Home inspector didn't cover or check the well. He said that was outside of his scope of expertise. Turns out they moved in, the well was dry. And the previous homeowner was just taking buckets of water and dumping it down the well, so it passed, showing that it has water for the general systems. So always, if they want to get more systems checked out, even better. And then let's see, right here, seller shall cause all utility services and any spa, pool, and other similar items to be operational. So even if they've moved out, whatever else, it does say the seller should have utility services operational, so the buyer can actually check out everything. So that's something too, if you represent a seller and they have everything turned off, it was an investment property, whatever else, for these inspections, the buyer does have the right to ask, hey, these need to be on it. And that's why I think they put it in bold here, so it's more clear. Next section, 273. Buyer agrees to indemnify seller from the acts of himself, his inspectors, or representatives. So if your inspector falls off the roof, then like they're basically saying, hey, you can't sue the seller unless it was something negligent. But if they fall off, like we can't go after the seller, or if we mess up, we can't go after the seller. So that's what this is saying right here, 273 through 275. Right here is kind of the biggest point that I'm trying to get further clarification with TAR and the forms. So buyer waives any objections to matters of purely cosmetic nature. So that means if you're conducting your inspections in your inspection period, you probably can't cancel a contract because you say, hey, I don't like the paint color. So it's got to be something that's actually wrong with the property. A key thing right now that I'm going back with TAR and they didn't have an answer for me was a light switch plate. So even though it could be deemed kind of decorative, some of those plates, you know, with the light switches get a little bit more fancy, whatever designs. And is that cosmetic, or is that actually an object that you could cancel based on? Because it covers the electrical wiring, and in order to replace a light plate, it's just one little screw, but as soon as you take that plate off, all of a sudden the wires are exposed and you have to change it. So that's why I'm trying to get this further clarified and cleaned up a little bit with cosmetic nature, because it's kind of open-ended. Any questions so far?
No, not so far.
Okay. So initial inspection. So buyer shall have the right and responsibility to enter the property during normal business hours. So this is again saying they have the right to. The biggest thing though, I always say is like, we're working together on this transaction with the listing agent. And so let's still ask to get our times approved. So not just say, hey, the inspection is tomorrow at 8 a.m. Like let's book something out. It gives the sellers enough time to approve it, make sure their schedule is clear. Like you have the right, but it doesn't mean like it's automatic whenever you say so. So just something to think about with those when you're scheduling your inspections. And then also when they are making the inspections, it's visual analysis of the condition of the property, accessibly installed components, and the operation of property systems. So that's just meaning really like the inspectors can't create holes in the wall because they're wanting to check the electrical behind the wall, or like they're not damaging the property. It's stuff that they can already get to without changing the components of the house, like easily accessible. They can reach it. The electrical panel is right there to check, or stuff like that. So that's what is kind of fair game when you're doing your inspections. The next section, wood destroying insect infestation inspection report. So this is optional, although highly recommended. Coming from Florida, it seemed like every house had termites. So it was kind of just a given. Here in Tennessee, it's not as prevalent, but I still have seen a lot of cases where termites do pop up or other wood destroying insects. So it's saying if desired by buyer or required by buyer's lender, it shall be buyer's responsibility to obtain at buyer's expense this report. And then again, it has to be by a Tennessee licensed pest control operator. The inspection shall include the dwelling, garage, other permanent structure on the property, excluding, a lot of times I see here people put nothing, they put NA. So when you're getting this inspection, like the more we can check out, the better. So usually people just put nothing or something of the equivalent here. checking for the evidence of active infestation or damage. And then this is the big thing to keep aware of with your timeframes. So buyer shall cause such report to be delivered to seller simultaneously with any repairs requested by the buyer or the end of the inspection period. So down here, we'll kind of dive into this. But if we want to say, hey, we would like these items repaired, the same time we do that, we need to deliver this insect infestation report. It's kind of a tongue twister. And then here is another important line, 294. If the report indicates evidence of active infestation, seller agrees to treat the infestation at seller's expense. So again, this is saying they agree to treat the property. Let's say termites have dug all through some pieces of wood or whatever else and damaged them. It's not saying they have to agree to repair the damages. They just have to treat for the infestation. And then if you do want to request any repairs of damage, it should be addressed in the request for repairs below in this section. So the only thing in the contract that the seller has to do is treat it. And now we move to kind of our timeline with the inspections. So within blank days after the binding agreement date, which is known as our inspection period, buyer shall cause to be conducted any inspections provided for herein, but not including or limited to this and this. So usually what I've seen here a lot of times is I've seen 10 days. I've seen 7 days because it's a little bit more, well, it's a very competitive market right now. I used to see around 15 days is kind of typically the ballpark I've been seeing. And the reason is if you need your inspector to come out and the buyer schedule the inspector, it might take 2 to 3 days. Some of them are pretty backed up. So it might take 2 to 3 days before they even get out to the property. And then it might take another 24 to 48 hours to get your report back. So we're already probably at day 5 comfortably before we start talking with the buyer of if you want to move forward with this contract or if you want to ask for repairs. So that's why I wouldn't suggest going below 7. Can it be done? Yes. However, you start running into kind of a time crunch. And then if it's too close of time and you need more, well, now you have to get a signed extension. So usually I'd say don't go below 7. But again, it's fully negotiable, whatever they're comfortable with. And then once we start our inspections and we have a report, insect infestation inspection report done, and we want to decide what to do, there's 3 options normally. And they've just added this new checkbox down here, but there's 3 options normally. So number 1 is it's saying we've conducted buyer's good faith inspections as provided for herein. And then buyer shall furnish seller with a list of written specified objections and immediately terminate this agreement via the notification form or equivalent. So option 1 is we're canceling because of blank. And it's got to be a justified reason. And then again, it's saying in good faith. So it's not that we're under contract and we're purposely trying to get out of the deal, because that could be viewed as not having good faith. So it's something legitimate, like, hey, the AC doesn't work at all. It's going to cost $6 grand, $7 grand to replace it. Like, we want out of the deal. Option 2 is accepting the property in its present as is condition. And again, whatever option we're doing, we should notify the seller, because if we don't notify them within 10 days and it's day 11, then it's just saying right here that we're accepting the property as is. So you can notify them sooner, and that does help the sellers kind of alleviate their worries of, oh my gosh, I wonder what popped up. Are they taking the house? So it is just common courtesy. If you're going to accept it as is, like if it's before the 10 days, that's always a good practice to just let them know. But if you hit day 11, you're already just taking it as is, according to this bold right here. The last option is we can send a list of items that we want to be repaired to the listing agent. And when we do that, as soon as we do that, we're now moving from the inspection period to what's called the resolution period. And if we've done our inspections and we send that list on day 5 of the inspection period, well, we don't have 5 more days to do inspections. We are now starting our resolution period. So this is cut short as soon as we send over the repair replacement proposal. And then right here, you're going to set a deadline for how long do you guys have for a resolution period. So buyer and seller shall then have a period of, and I've seen a lot of times 5 days is pretty typical of what I see. And again, this is fully negotiable. You can do 2 days, you can do 3, 7. So sometimes you can say, you can put more days if you anticipate, hey, the AC is going to pop up, and before the seller agrees to fix it, they're going to want to get quotes. That might take a couple days. So that's things to think about when you're saying, how long do we need for a resolution period? So let's say 5 for this example. And now that we're in our resolution period, we have 5 days to reach a mutual agreement as to the items to be repaired or replaced with like quality or value by the seller. And let's see, this is covering what I just said. The parties agree to negotiate repairs in good faith during the resolution period. One situation I had pop up is an agent asked me, well, we submitted a repair proposal and the sellers just said no. That's not good faith? Well, it actually is. The seller saying no, that's completely okay. They've never agreed to actually repair anything by accepting this contract. Good faith is still communicating timely, no, we're not going to do anything. And then the buyers either have to submit another repair proposal, or right here it's saying buyer retains the ability to accept the property as is. So maybe as the buyers, they have a wish list, we submit it, sellers say no, then the buyers can just say, you know what, we'll go ahead and just move forward anyways. It wasn't that big of a deal for us, the items that popped up. And then in the event seller and buyer do not reach a mutual written resolution during this resolution period, or have an extension made within the time frame, this agreement is hereby terminated. If terminated, buyer is entitled to a refund of the earnest money. Any questions so far?
We're good.
Last box is the new box they added for 2022. So a lot of agents were adding what's commonly referred to as like a pass-fail inspection. But in the problem was in their special stipulations, they were just putting inspection is pass-fail. Well, we don't know, well, if you fail it, what happens? They weren't saying buyer to get their earnest money back, or if this happens, then this happens. They were just putting pass-fail. So the attorneys with TAR created this checkbox, and this essentially, this is with legal terminology that they put, but in essence, it's very similar to a pass-fail situation. So if you check this, I'm going to remove the days here, because buyer waives the option to request items to be repaired or replaced under D3 above, and there shall be no resolution period. Now, what you can still do as buyers is, let's say the AC is bad. Well, they can still ask during the whole contract period from bound agreement to closing date. You can make any sort of request you want. You can ask at any time for the purchase price to be reduced. You can ask for repairs. However, the seller's under no obligation when you check this to accept anything. So they can just say no, but you can still ask. This is just saying you can't request items to be repaired under D3. So by basically moving into a resolution period. Buyer retains the right to perform buyer's inspections and to timely furnish seller with a list of written specified objections and immediately terminate this agreement as provided in D1 above, or accept the property as is condition as D2 above. So really, this is just eliminating the resolution period, and now we have to pick option 1 or option 2 from our inspections. Final thing right here, if you check this, if you leave this alone, and then we eliminate this, and we just check this, this is saying we waive all inspections. Buyer having been advised of the benefits of inspection waives any and all inspection rights under section 8, including but not limited to the wood destroying insect infestation inspection report. So that's if you want none. Now, I would just, to keep things clear, I wouldn't put like 7 days here and then check this, because now we're kind of creating conflicting situations. So if you check this, just make sure everything else is blank, because you're waiving all of this. It doesn't apply. Let's go back. Final inspection. So buyer and or his inspectors, representatives shall have the right to conduct a final inspection of property on the closing date or within blank days prior to the closing date, only to confirm property is in the same or better condition as it was on the binding agreement date, normal wear and tear accepted, and to determine that all repairs, replacements agreed to during the resolution period, if any, have been completed. And then property shall remain in such condition until closing at seller's expense. Closing of this sale. This is the biggest one. We had a situation, there was no repairs asked for. They conducted their final inspection or their final walkthrough, final inspection, final walkthrough. And then they moved into the home, and then they had an issue. It was very small. I can't remember, but they were saying, hey, we want this fixed. Well, sadly, line 338, closing of this sale constitutes acceptance of the property in its condition as of the time of closing, unless otherwise noted in writing. So now that they've already closed, they've accepted the home as it is. So if we need to get anything fixed, if anything pops up during the final walkthrough, we need to extend our closing date. We need to ask for concessions. We need to get the items agreed to be repaired. We need to figure out something, because as soon as we close on the property, they're accepting its condition. So that's a big one. The other thing recently that popped up was the buyer shall have the right to conduct a final inspection of the property on the closing date, only to confirm the property is in the same or better condition. So when we had all that snow, I think it was like a month ago, and there's even talks of snow coming up on Friday night, Saturday. But the sellers winterized the pool. Now when they first saw the home and everything else, the pool was operational. It looked beautiful. The water was moving. The filters were going. Well, by the final inspection period, we had all that snow and the property was winterized. Well, the buyer had an issue with that because they were saying, hey, I can't confirm the condition of the pool is the same as when we went under contract. And according to the contract, they do have a right to make sure the property is in the same or better condition. So they have the right to have that pool turned back on and check that it's still working. That was their big thing, is saying, hey, we want it turned on to make sure it's still working. They didn't winterize it and there could be a problem. So that was a situation that came up with final inspection. Anything so far? I know I'm kind of diving into the legal framework of it. I created a video on this notification form the other day, but how it says we have to choose an option if we do our standard inspection, and we have to choose one of 3 options: cancel, accept as is, or now we move to a resolution period. We have 3 options. Well, you'll notice everything says that, where is it? Shall furnish seller with a list of written items and immediately terminate this agreement via the notification form or equivalent written notice. So one thing right here is with terminating it, if the buyer calls you and says, hey, I'm okay to terminate this agreement, the AC doesn't work, I want out. And you can type an email, send it to the listing agent, that is equivalent written notice. However, by not using the notification form, we set ourselves up for a potential legal situation. And if we had that phone call with the buyer and they told us to go ahead and cancel, 10 minutes later after we send the email, the buyer could come back and say, no, I didn't tell you that. I didn't want to cancel. I want to keep moving forward. So that's why we use the notification form versus just just an email or whatever else, because the notification form is a way to have the buyer sign off on whatever instructions he's giving us. So right here, this is a notification from you would check buyer, notifying the buyer, and this is number 12, 13, or 14. Buyer has made any and all inspections available under the inspection section of the purchase and sale and is exercising buyer's right to immediately terminate the purchase and sale agreement with all earnest money refunded to buyer. So you would check this. You can list specified objections here. So I could put AC not working. And then we would have our client sign this. And then once it's signed, then we send that to the listing agent. And this notification form would help protect us better legally versus just an email. Even though an email will work, this is just the solid plan to protect yourself. You can also do 13 right here. Buyer has made any and all inspections available and accepts the property in its as is condition. So that's that checkbox right there. That's the notification form. There's 36 items on this. So I would always, if you haven't read this already, read every line item because they cover everything in the contract. Any sort of notices, terminations, whatever. There's 36 line items. I would read it. It's very, very helpful to use this form. And then the last two forms, real quick, are the repair replacement proposal. So let's say we choose option 3 from our inspections. And when I say we, I'm really meaning the buyer based on his instructions, what he's telling us. But if the buyer is saying, hey, I want to ask for these items to be repaired or replaced, we would use this form. So the repair replacement proposal, and we would number it number 1 with our first proposal. Maybe that gets rejected and then we have to move to number 2 or number 3. We can go number 1. And this form is for information and or negotiation purposes only and is not to be included as part of the purchase and sale agreement. So this is truly just, hey, we're throwing it out there. There's not even a place for the sellers to sign if they agree to this. So you would put your binding agreement date here, purchase the property, 123 Main Street, Nashville, TN. I know that's not the right zip code, but I'm just putting that there. Now this is list of items to be repaired or replaced. And then it's saying the parties hereby understand that they are required to negotiate repairs in good faith during the resolution period. Good faith includes, but is not limited to timely communication. So again, if you submit this and it's a 5-day repair resolution period and the seller never responds, well, that's not good faith from the seller. So they still have to respond. And that's good faith. The undersigned hereby proposes that the following written list of items be repaired or replaced with like quality or value in a professional and workmanlike manner. And then upon request, either party shall submit a copy of any supporting documentation substantiating any item. So list of items, you could put whatever pops up in the inspection that the buyer wants. My suggestion is always, like, we can't ask for truly cosmetic items, even though that can get a little blurry sometimes. But I always say with this, create an entire list for your buyers and kind of break it down like this. Let's have our must-haves. Determine what is a make it or break it during our repair proposal situation. What do we actually need to move forward? And then it doesn't hurt to negotiate and ask. So let's throw in some wish list items. And that can help during your resolution period too, because if we submit, let's say 8 items, 4 of them are must-haves, 4 of them are wish list items. Well, if the seller says no or whatever else, maybe we would drop it down in half, which gets back to our must-haves. But on the seller's viewpoint, it's like, hey, they've actually come down and they're meeting us halfway. So I always say kind of mix it in, add the must-haves, add a wish list, and then have the buyer prepared that if they need to take off those wish list items. So like AC to be replaced or something like this, you would just go down and list anything that you want as a repair replacement proposal here. Now, when everybody says, hey, we're cool with these items, you move on to the repair replacement amendment. And then the same thing here, you put the binding agreement date, address. Seller shall cause the following items to be repaired or replaced with quality, like quality or value, professional and workmanlike manner. Now, here what I do is some items, if they are really big ticket items, I usually want to say AC to be replaced by a licensed professional and receipt to be provided, or something like that. Those two phrases to add in there, by a licensed professional and receipts to be provided. That way too, like we had a licensed person, and usually those people have some sort of warranty with their work, or whatever else, because we don't want the seller to become the DIY expert from YouTube or something like that. So list out your items that everybody agrees to. I recommend those two items, a receipt and a licensed professional. And then right here, seller agrees to complete the above matters blank days prior to the closing as provided in this agreement, at which time buyer's inspector shall have the right to re-inspect that to confirm that such matters have been completed. And then everybody would sign here. So that's kind of the inspections section of the contract. It's very, very detailed. You're going to have to read that section 2-3 times over to make it make sense. And then you can always reach out to me with questions. But that is kind of everything I had for tonight without bogging you guys down too much.
I have one question.
Yes.
Okay, on a new build though, when you're doing an inspection, do I still need to do a repair and proposal, even though they are asking for the actual inspection report?
So with new builds, a lot of times they're going to use something different than a traditional inspection. That is an option to do. However, a lot of times they do, it's kind of commonly referred to as like a blue tape walkthrough.
Right.
It is like, hey, before closing, week before closing, whatever else, we walk through, we blue tape everything. And then you can even have both parties sign off on like, here's the items that everybody agrees to and move forward.
But what I did was I had an inspection the other day, and the inspection was rendered and everything, but all they asked for was the report. And I'm thinking, okay, should I put that in the proposal, or, you know, was the report sufficient?
As far as like, if you're asking for things to be replaced and sending off the report.
Yeah, they just asked for the whole report.
Yeah, so that's where it gets interesting, because TAR's put out a lot of information on that. Is basically, upon request, either party shall submit a copy of any supporting documentation substantiating any item listed below. So that could mean that you could send that portion of the report versus the entire thing. Because if you send the entire thing and now the seller has a copy, there could be items that the seller now has to disclose for future. If the contract falls out between you guys, now the seller has to disclose all these extra things.
Yeah, but that was their request to receive the whole report since it was a new build.
Okay, so yeah, so you could, I would look at what that contract was saying, but if you submitted this, the repair replacement proposal, it's just saying you have to provide documentation for any item listed below. So if it's not listed, then you probably don't have to send the entire thing.
I don't have to send the entire report, or?
Correct. Yeah, you don't have to.
Yeah, but they requested it, the builder did. That's what I'm saying. So should I send, I already sent the report. So what I'm asking is, do I need to send the proposal as well?
If they're going to make repair requests, then yes, you would send that proposal too.
Okay, so I need to get busy and do that. That was why I was on here tonight.
Yeah. No, you're good. And then, are you guys using a builder's contract or?
Yes, it's a builder's contract.
Okay, so that I would say, go ahead and if you want, you can send that to me, because every builder's contract is different as far as their expectations, and even their inspection wording is completely different than the Tennessee Realtor forms.
Okay.
So maybe there would be something in there that it says buyer to furnish inspection report if it's been completed.
Yeah, because I don't want any surprises with this.
Yeah. And it
Okay.
is the buyer's decision too. So if it's like, hey, it's not really a big deal to me, go ahead and send the whole report. Like then it's kind of a moot point anyways.
Okay. I'll just send this over to you.
Okay,
Thank you.
no worries. Any other questions, or I can let you guys go. I know it's been already 40 minutes talking about inspections. That is fun. We have to watch like some funny YouTube animal videos or something after this to lighten us back up.
Okay, thank you, Zach.
All right,
Thank you.
Thank you guys. Enjoy your night.
Okay. I'll send
Everybody,
this over
you too.
shortly.
Bye-bye.
All right, bye.